Now to our first conversation. Nigeria's agricultural industry has been experiencing several shocks since the pandemic disrupted the food system and hampered productivity. High insecurity has impacted farming activities also in the country, and the situation got more intense in 2022, forcing many farmers to abandon their farmland. Meanwhile, Central Bank of Nigeria said its various development finance interventions have boosted food security in Nigeria. And we also see the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, he signed the National Development Fund bill, which is now an act. So much to unpack in that sector today. Joining me now is Rotimi Williams, founder of Kereksuk Rice Farms. Great to have you on the great to have you right here on Business Morning in our Abuja studio.
Good morning, Ladi. Thank you very much. Good morning.
So let's start off with the National Agricultural Development Fund Act. Former President Muhammadu Buhari did sign this into law late 2022, but it seems nobody's talking about this fund. Tell us about this fund and what to expect, going forward.
I'd like to start by just saying that I think the fund, in every sense, is the right direction. I've always advocated for agricultural funds to be created off the back of the levy when you're importing this crop. So basically, the levy you pay on rice, on importing rice, is the same levy that goes to fund your local production, and be it in wheat, maize, and other products. But in the creation of the Nigerian Agricultural Development Fund, I think that just a bit more light needs to be shared as to what exactly the mandate is. I think it's a great fund initiative, but we need to know more about it. We haven't heard a lot. I think it was inaugurated last year, but the MD was really picked about a few days to inauguration. So we don't know too much about it. And just like you, I'm also waiting to learn. But I think it's a fantastic initiative, and if handled properly, the impact could be, probably way better than the anchor borrower.
So gauging how it would work, going forward, they're taxing imports right now of most of these grain products. And what is that tax? What's that money supposed to go into? I hear it's to develop local production. How exactly is it supposed to work?
Okay, so if I just track back a bit, so if you look at rice, for example, they closed the borders and they stopped the banned importation of rice. And I've always advocated for that ban to be lifted, because I believe that if you allow rice to be imported and the importers pay their levy and their duty on that rice, on that shipment, and then the levy, a portion of that levy can be used to create a fund which will then invest in the production of that same product. So basically, your importation is funding your local production. That's what makes sense. Now, in terms of disbursement, I generally feel like that fund should come in and address the issues of land clearing. Land clearing cost is a huge aspect of agriculture that a lot of small-time farmers cannot afford. Last time I checked, there was about 150,000 to 200,000 naira to clear a hectare of land. You see, so how do you expect someone at the subsistence level to afford that? So I think if the fund can address that, if the fund can also address security issues, right, within the rural area, rural farming communities, that would be amazing. I also think that in terms of tractor hiring, if the fund can come and bridge the point at which you pay for tractors and inputs. So for example, a farmer paying for a tractor to plow his land and paying for the inputs at the beginning of the season is a lot of pressure on the farmer. If you defer that payment to the end of the season and use that fund as a bridge to the provider, that will allow the farmer to expand on the land he's producing on, and you'll be able to double production. So I think if it's applied in that manner, then we have something good going.
Yeah, we definitely hope it's applied, in that manner. But let's look at the CBN's agriculture flagship program. That's the Anchor Borrowers Program. I saw that screaming headline yesterday that about 500 billion naira lost to Anchor Borrowers Program. Yeah, that sounds quite bad. Is it that the farmers, or most of the farmers, aren't paying back, those loans? Is that the issue here?
I think so. I think the Anchor Borough itself, I mean, it wasn't the worst initiative in the world. I think it came to bridge a gap. But in the implementation and the merit of the people giving these monies, I think, is where the flaws are. So a lot of, I mean, I attempted to get this fund, but it was always one story after the other, and the Bank of Agric wasn't funded. So, and going through a commercial bank just didn't make sense because they don't understand, they don't have appetite for that risk for agriculture, so it didn't make any sense. But however, when it comes to when it came to the deployment of or disbursing of the funds, there are too many shambolic things going on in the background. There was monies being paid up front to be able to access this fund. You're going to have to ask the people approving the monies as to what exactly went on there. And, you know, once you pay a huge kickback of 15-20%, why would you return the money? So if I ask for 2 billion and I'm paying you 400 million naira in advance as a bribe to get access to the 2 billion, why should I give you back that 2 billion? Because it's going to take me 1 or 2 years to, first of all, recover the kickback I've given you. And this was the norm. They normalized this during, for this Anchor Borough. It didn't make any sense. So the impairment you see now, that is a huge factor. So if you disburse the 1.4 trillion, about 280 billion has already gone in kickbacks. That's money that's sunk, is gone. So how then do you expect the other people? If you now look at the issues in the agricultural sector, you look at flood, you look at insecurity, you look at the market structure, the general know-how, and the challenges in the agri sector, coupled with the kickbacks given, it's already hard to even give back the entire 2 billion within the time frame. Now, add that issue of paying the kickback and expecting the money back, it's not going to happen.
But we definitely still need to...
It's an initiative with good intentions, but executed poorly.
We still need to confirm if kickbacks were actually paid. You know, we can't really confirm that, you know, for sure. It's still, you know, word of mouth, you know, at this time. But, you know, were there any positives? Were there any positives at all to this Anchor Boroughs program?
Like I said, the intentions were good. I'm not saying that everyone who took the money, whether kickback was paid or not, did not do what they were supposed to do. But I'm saying that in terms of how the monies were given out and purely the merits, I mean, there are people I know that are proper farmers who couldn't access this funding. And then you tell me that some politician got the fund and yet is sitting down in the house. Do you understand? Who exactly is on the farm? And if you consider me to be one of the biggest rice farmers in the country with a huge amount of land, not accessing that fund, it'll be interesting to know who exactly the money was given to. So I'm not saying that the Anchor Borough scheme did not make sense or there were no positives, but I'm just saying that the negative far outweighs the positive at this point.
And definitely, you know, looking at the program, do you think it should be continued, or what can be done different to actually make it work, you know, for the agricultural sector?
I think, first of all, I think it needs to be moved off the balance sheet of the central bank. I think the appropriate ministries should begin to handle this sort of intervention. So if you look at the Anchor Borough, for example, should have been a deal between the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Agric with the Bank of Agric disbursing the funds. Do you understand? That's how it should have been. So I think that for continuation, move the fund to the appropriate ministry that understands the risk and the deployment and has years of experience in dealing within that sector, not the central bank.
And definitely the central bank did confirm a lot of disbursements into that sector. Is there any other reason why we're still seeing food prices high at this point?
Again, like I said, if you tell me, if you want to measure the impact, right, of any intervention, look at the aim itself. So if the aim was to drop or to reduce the price of rice, go to the market and check. In the last 5 years, the price of rice hasn't dropped, right? Which basically signals that nothing has changed. And then your smuggling activities has not also changed, which also suggests that the supply gap is maintained, it's still the same. So then how then can you tell me that the scheme is successful? Purely because you see a few people wearing T-shirts on TV saying they are farming. That is not farming. Do you understand? So for me, if you want to measure this program, tell me that between this period and this period, rice came down by X%, but due to inflation and inflation of the inflationary on import cost, it went up to this much, it went up by this much. We will still be able to measure the impact. But where we are now, there's really nothing. There's nothing. It's 1.4 trillion or there, but we don't even know what the true figure is anymore. Gone. It's thinner, it's gone.
And it seems the Anchors Boros program only focused on rice farmers. We didn't get much action with oil palm, rubber, cashew, and others. They were quite ignored. Why do you think that happened?
Well, I had this conversation a couple of days ago, and I think it just boils down to, first, I think rice is an economic crop. I also believe that a lot of PR was built around the association, for the Rice Association, and in that manner they were able to push a lot of funds in that direction. Perhaps the Oil Palm Association is not as vocal or as strong. So I think that was primarily the reason why this happened. In hindsight, I think, I don't want to get in trouble, but I believe that is the reason why you saw a lot of the funds diverted to rice. It's just an economic crop. If election comes, everybody's bagging rice to give out to people to vote. If Christmas comes, everybody's buying rice. If Salah comes, everybody's buying rice. It's an economic crop. So it kind of made sense, but not at the expense of other crops.
And you did mention the, farmer associations. What role did these associations play, in most of these, the disbursement, processes of most of these interventions?
Well, I think those associations, perhaps the head of the Rice Association will need to come and answer those questions, because there were quite a few questionable acts on their path. I'm not a member of the Rice Association, the Rice Farmers Association. I never quite understood the point in having those associations. If you're going to grow rice, you understand, grow rice, the market forces will determine the price. You don't need an association for that in terms of organizing the sector, in terms of dissemination of information to farmers. That was done poorly. I saw the Rice Association opening or signing an agreement in Benin Republic for land to produce rice. Why would you take Nigerian central bank money to go and produce rice in Benin Republic? Why is your director speaking French? Why is he from Niger? So there are a lot of questions that they need to answer, So again, there's that issue of that lack of monetary aspect when it comes to disbursement and who you're disbursing money to, which is the issue of merit I mentioned earlier.
So I guess, in Nigeria, we have associations for, almost everything, in Nigeria. But, now we're here, with all the interventions in the agri sector. What do you think, should happen, going forward? What do you think should be the plan of action for President Tinubu in this, for this agricultural sector?
Okay, so I think that we should have certain focus crops. I think, so if you can't just focus on just rice, we need to diversify a bit. So we're going to have to look at cassava. Cassava is a huge crop across Africa, West Africa, and also East Africa. And also China. China is buying a lot of cassava. You have to look at ginger. You have to look at the share industry. So there are a lot of products that were actually pinpoint and say, okay, these are the export products. These are the products we want to grow for Nigerians to consume. Earmark them in that manner, and then fund them. But in a way that you can measure the funding. And also, please, move back agriculture to the Ministry of Agric. Let finance fund any intervention and give the Bank of Agric money, because they're the only the bank that understands the risk. Do you understand? That has the appetite for the risk. I understand that it takes time to make money in agriculture. Commercial banks don't understand that. So that's what I believe needs to be done. And also, NERSA should go back to the original mandate. NERSA was created to give guarantees on loans, not to give out loans. How much was sunk? There's a 400 billion naira issue in NERSA that seems to have gone quiet. They need to revisit that issue, because these people came overnight and ruined the sector, which I worked very hard, to help in structuring. So for me, it's a bit personal as well. So I think in that light, if the government can move agriculture back to the Ministry of Agriculture, brush up NERSA, the original mandate of guaranteeing, so that if a commercial bank is giving a loan, they can get the guarantee from NERSA, right? Then we're on the right track. And then the Nigerian Agricultural Development Fund coming in to plug the gaps strategically. I think then we're onto something good.
All right, we'll definitely keep watching that fund going forward for sure. Thank you so much. We'll have to leave it there now. Mr. Rotimi Williams, founder, Kersuk Rice Farms. It's great having your perspective today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ladi. Thank you.
All right, so after the break, AFEX Commodities Market Update is next. Do stay with us. There's Business Morning.